on this call. I'm going to click record before I forget because I have been known to, and really keen for other parents to catch up on this at a later date. So thanks everyone for jumping on. We've got real small numbers, kind of 10 or so of you, which is absolutely fine, and we'll make sure we disseminate this out to other parents as and when. So really appreciate you giving up your time tonight. Good news is it's not going to be a long one. It's certainly not the intention to be. Um, the purpose of tonight really is just to kind of spend 25 minutes, maybe half an hour of Andrew and myself, predominantly me, really, just trying to give you some really simple and concise feedback on some of the technical criteria, some of the key things that ourselves as coaches were looking at really, and asking ourselves some questions of when we were reviewing the videos that you guys sent in regarding your sons and daughters. So you're obviously on this call just as a layer of context is obviously they've not been successful in getting through to past the video stage. So look, as I say, the point of that really is for us to give you some clarity and hopefully provide a pointer or two where whether it's through whatever winter training they're about to embark on with their club or school or what have you, whatever match play they then get involved with at the start of next season, that you've got a bit of a semblance of maybe one or two things that they can just keep an eye on, and will stand them in a little bit of a better stead for a future opportunity. So I hope that makes sense.
But this is just a generic thing, or this is, wasn't it?
Oh, who was that? Sorry.
Andrew Rowlands. This is just going to be generic for each person. So certain players will have certain failings. So this won't be able to. You're only going to pick it out generically for everybody. You're not going to be able to tell each person where they went wrong.
That's correct, Andrew. That's what we sent out as a communication. Yeah,
Yeah,
we haven't got the time. I'm sure we haven't got the time to go through about 87 individual video clips for various players. So it is quite generic in nature, I'm afraid. So some of it you may feel is relevant to your son or daughter, some of it may not be, but it will certainly give you a clue as to what we've been looking at and what we kind of base our decisions off, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm just going to pop you on mute there, Andrew. If you want to come off that for any point, I was about to say, with the low numbers, it probably will work if somebody wants to interrupt me and come off mute. That's probably okay. I was going to keep questions as most as we can into the chat box, if at all possible. And the reason for that is, I'm just going to go through a slide for each discipline. So batting, bowling, seam bowling, and spin bowling. And what I don't want to do is, if your son or daughter here is a wicketkeeper and that's the final slide, I don't want you here for 25 minutes waiting for the wicketkeeper slide to pop up. So I'll try and run through each slide as briefly as I can. If something pops into your head, just stick it in the chat box for now, and Andrew and I will get to it. But cool. I will share my screen. Andrew shouldn't need an introduction, but if he's not a familiar face, or an unfamiliar face rather, Andrew's the pathway lead for the South. Let me get this right. Cricket Wales South, Cricket Wales West boys and girls now, and looks after some bits for the girls East as well. So if you just bear with me for 1 second. Gemma, you're on my screen. I can see you on my screen. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that presentation? Wonderful, thank you. In its entirety. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna, as I say, I'm going to go through kind of as whistle stop a guide as I can, whilst trying to kind of give it some detail that it deserves. So batting, if we start with batting, um, ultimately three kind of fundamentals, if you're going to call them fundamentals, that underpin pretty much every part of batting, and this obviously bears a lot of relevance to when we were looking at the videos. So quality of decisions that players are making, and what I mean by that is making really good decisions around judging line and length, and making those decisions as quickly as possible. The quicker you can make those decisions, ultimately, the quicker you can get your body and organize your body into a position to hit the ball in whatever way, shape, or form that's going to be, depending on the delivery. So, how good is the decision that they're making, and how consistently are they making good decisions is a really big one for us. I can share these slides, by the way. If any of you are taking notes, don't be worried. I can send this out at request. That's no problem. And we'll probably send this out to clubs actually, just so that people have got a real clear idea of what we're looking at. Quality of balance. Hopefully, I don't know if we've got coaches as parents here, so I'll try and speak as if we haven't, and maybe there's not that kind of cricket background. So quality of balance and shape. What we mean by that in batting is often going from one balanced position and going then into another balanced position. So from your stance and then into whatever shot it is that you're trying to play. Often that can be static, often that can be dynamic. So you often see a lot of shots on the move if you're coming down the wicket. So you can be balanced in a dynamic way. But ultimately, your precision and execution will only be as good as the balanced position that you get yourself into. So that's a big one for us in terms of what position and what balance a player is getting into and what shape are they able to make on the back of that, if that makes sense. And lastly, in terms of fundamentals, quality of contact might sound a simple one. And it's probably less so. You'll see the ball fly off middles of the bat and it pings off is often the terminology that people use. It's probably less so that what we're looking for is, are batters able to play with a full face of the bat? Okay, I appreciate in a cut shot or a pull shot that might be slightly different. But ultimately, are we seeing an off drive, for example? Are players able to maintain a full face of the bat and make good, strong contact with the ball? Often you see batters, the bat face can turn slightly. There can be some outside edge involved. Often you see the ball choosing where to go off the bat, if that makes sense, rather than the batter having the control and the precision to actually guide the ball where they want it to go. And again, you come back to the consistency of being able to do that. So that's kind of what we mean by quality of contact, as those three fundamentals. I'm just going to move that little bit there so I can see what I've actually written here. So I'm just going to run through a couple of others. All of these bullet points relate to obviously the three fundamentals, but again, ultimately, look, can we look at the grit on some of those videos really precisely? No, we can't. But what we can tell is that people can play shots and players play shots based on what grip that they have. Okay, so we are having a little look at what is their basic setup like, what's their stance like, coming back to balance. Does their backswing have some rhythm to it? And people talk about upswing and downswing. Does their backswing have some rhythm when the ball's coming down at them, and does it look reasonably smooth as a whole action? Guard is probably not something we're too fussed on, but there were videos across all age groups actually where you might question, are you as a player entirely sure and comfortable of where you're standing on the crease? And that's probably more at the lower age groups, if I'm honest. But that's something I would certainly check and challenge as certainly if you kind of got one of an under 11, under 12 going through this process. Where are you standing on the crease? Are you standing in a position that's going to allow you to access the ball? Wherever that ball's going to come down. So you often see a lot of players standing quite a long way outside leg stump, exposing all three stumps. Often you see the other way where batters are actually quite a long way outside off stump and then struggle to access certain places to hit the ball. Consistency, scoring off the front foot. So I kind of touched on that really in terms of being balanced. I think the big one, and again, this is probably more at the younger age, but again can be relevant to everybody. But we really like to see some evidence of scoring off the back foot. And the reason for that is often what you see. It comes back to the quality of the decision at the very top of the slide. Often you see youngsters just kind of prod forward and not make a decision about whether it's appropriate to go forward or backward. And what you see is people coming hard at the ball and it comes actually up around waist height and the ball kind of skews off somewhere where it's maybe not intended to go. So what we really want to see is evidence that a player is able to play off the back foot and actually makes and judges the length of the ball. Yeah, that's a back foot shot. I need to come onto the back foot and I need to find a way to score or play an appropriate shot to that delivery. So that's what we mean by that one. and by the same notion, in terms of line, in terms of judging line, leg side play is something again that young players tend to struggle with generically, of course. Um, so do they have the ability to access the leg side, whether that's through an on drive, whether that's through a rolling your wrists on the ball and glancing it through square leg or mid wicket? Have they got the ability to play the pull shot? And again, that goes back to evidence of scoring off the back foot. So a little combination of those, it gives us a really good flavour of where that player is at. And then finally to spin, we've kind of touched on kind of when that's coming down at pace, but the same principle applies for when you're playing spin bowling. We will always say kind of what you notice in young players, good young players, is they're able to judge line and length, especially to spin really, really quickly. As I say, the later you judge that, the less proactive you can be, I suppose, of selecting A, what appropriate shot you might need to play to that ball, but B, then what movements do I actually have to put together to be able to get into that position. So the quicker you can make that decision and the quicker you can work that out, the better equipped you'll be ultimately. And very lastly, just some evidence of playing with confidence to straight balls. That doesn't necessarily mean big, strong, blazing, attacking shots. It can, but without sounding too old school and at risk of sounding too old school, we do keep an eye out as well for actually. And again, it comes back to maybe where you're standing on the crease. Comes back to all of those three fundamentals. Is have you got some confidence and some adeptness at actually defending and playing straight balls? Okay, so any batter that's worth their weight in gold at whatever age, at whatever level, a bowler's going to be looking to hit your top of off stump. And as we as young cricketers, have we got the ability to keep that out, but also demonstrate some competence around straight deliveries? And that's with pace and spin. Okay. That's lots of me prattling there. I'm just going to pause and move on to the next one, and just keep an eye on that chat box for me if any of that doesn't make sense. I'm just going to go to seam bowling if that's okay. So seam bowling, pace bowling, whichever way you want to phrase it, and we probably break this down into kind of pre-delivery phase and actually what the outcome is at the end of that. So for us, looking at many of these videos, I think the first one to note is, look, is there an obvious intent to bowl the ball as quickly as possible? That is fundamentally what pace or seam bowling is about, is bowling the ball quickly, and we want to see youngsters trying to do that. Have they got the ability to get some sideways movement, whether that's laterally off the pitch or swing the ball? Those two, a combination of those three, pace, sideways movement, or swing, or even just one of those, tends to be, if you've got one of those, and you can control it, and you've got some ability to control that's something that we're really interested in. So as I say, I appreciate it's a generic feedback session, but if your son or daughter's looking at their bowling going, okay, I'm not rapid pace at the moment, that I'll maybe come on to a few points around that in a minute. If I'm not rapid pace, what else have I got? Do I swing the ball? Do I get some seam movement off the pitch? And if the answer to both of those is no, you're going to have to be really, really accurate to the point where the ball is literally going to have to go there 10 times out of 10 to be able to cause a batsman some real, or batter, sorry, I should say, some real problems. So hopefully that just gives a small flavour. But in terms of pre-delivery, again, look, repeatable run-ups and approaches to the crease, really important. And it's really important that there's some acceleration in there. So run-up and approach often, whatever happens at the outcome is often a collection of things that happen in the build-up to actually releasing the ball. So the run-up is such an important part to that. So we want to see, I think it's on the next one actually. Yeah, in terms of athleticism and effort, no one's disputing the actual effort that's going involved, but equally that acceleration and approach to the crease, that might be through some good running mechanics. That might be, really sprinting up in your last 2 or 3 paces to get up to the crease, build up some momentum so that everything by the time you reach the crease is starting to help you get the ball down as quickly as possible. So not only in terms of pace and approach to the crease, your angle and approach to the crease, is that all working together? Is it all going in a straight line? So alignment is a really, really big one for anybody in seam bowling or any bowler in particular. Are you aligned? Are your feet on the crease? Are they aligned towards the target? We don't want to see a huge amount of leaning over in terms of side flexion. And what I mean by that is kind of your spine leaning over to the left-hand side quite a lot. And you do see that quite a lot. Very natural at a younger age. And as I say, that's something we would see with players even in the program now. That's not something I'd expect to see nobody not do, if that makes sense, on a video nomination. But often it's probably the run up and the acceleration and the real, is everything going towards a target and is everything going in a straight line. And then by the time you actually get to the crease, so you've done your run up, you've got an intent to bowl quickly. Can we see any potential pace indicators that are going to suggest kind of biomechanically that you've got the ability to bowl the ball fast? And there are a couple of indicators around that. I won't go into that in a huge amount of depth now. But two of those often tend to be whether your front foot lands with a heel strike first, rather than just, sometimes it's the top of your foot that hits the ground first, which puts a lot of pressure, a lot of force and pressure through your body. But then also, are you able to bowl the brace front leg? So again, that's not something I would expect. We've got lots and lots of cricketers that don't bowl the brace front leg, and there's no right or wrong way. But the science will tell you that bowling the brace front leg and absorbing that load and force through the ball, through your brace front leg, absorbing your body at the crease, is a really strong indicator that actually, yeah, I can then get the ball down really, really quickly. So if we see that in a video nomination, that's one of the reasons why we ask for those videos to come from side on, so we get a really good view of that and to see what that looks like at point of release. Then that can make us go, forget rear view and front on view. Actually, if you see the side on view first, that will tell you a lot before you actually see the outcome. So that's sometimes some of the questions we ask ourselves. And then look, a really important point to make is, aside from all the technical points made so far, ultimately you look at the outcome. That's the biggest and most simple fundamental point you look at. Where has the ball gone? Can the player and can the bowler consistently and repeatedly bowl their best ball? And for a seam bowler, your best ball, whether you're a right arm or a left arm seamer, is going to be somewhere in and around top of off stump. Can you be consistently and repeatedly hitting that? And if you're going to link it to the technical points we've said, your action, if you have a good technical action, your likelihood is that your consistency is going to be a lot better. Okay. Very last one. We mentioned about having lateral movement or bounce even, and a bit of swing. And I think the important point to note there is actually, is the player in control of that? So I'm probably referring to swing more at this point. It's great if you've got the ability to swing the ball. Again, especially at a young age, it's a really, really good attribute to have. But often you'll see, and again, we see it on plenty of videos. Often you'll see a ball swinging, start straight, swings miles down the leg side, or bowler pulls it and it swings quite a long way outside off stump. So that's a real work in progress as to how do you actually learn to control that swing, and is there an awareness of actually, how do I swing it a little bit? How do I swing it a lot? What do I need to do in terms of my release point to maybe control that a little bit more? Okay. Superb.
We've got a question in the box, and it's about the bowling. So, do you want me to answer that, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's come off screen for a minute. Yeah, go for it. What question have we got?
So, how can you know the answer to
Andrew.
repeat or run up when you only see 4 videos? You said about moving the ball. Doesn't seem to, as you don't get much opportunity in the video setup.
I think that's Andrew again. Andrew, do you want to just come off mute and give me some context to that, if you like?
Yeah, well, like I played for Donkeys. I was a seam bowler, I'm a co-coach now. I've been doing it for over a year and a bit. So I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm doing. I've been playing first team cricket since 14. So looking at two or three videos of side action, and it seems to be pace was the main thing here, and not actually getting the ball to move about and control. It seems, have they got pace? Are they going to get quicker? More than actually, can they move the ball left? Can they move the ball away? Can they move the ball in? And generally, them hitting the same spot all the time. Well, if you're only going to do two or three videos, you're never really going to see that properly until you get him in the net or get him bowling and seeing him over 3-4 overs, 5 overs bowling to a bat in a proper net scenario.
Yeah, look, it's not all about pace, Andrew's first point to make. It's definitely not all about pace. That's not the only thing that we're fussed about. As I mentioned, I could name you a couple of members on the Glamorgan staff who haven't been blessed with a huge amount of pace, but have got some really good attributes in other things. So absolutely, literal movement, swing, consistency and reliability of where the ball's coming out all the time is as good an attribute to have as if you don't have the pace. As I say, without plucking an example out from the wide number of video nominations we got, you do see a lot of variance in people's actions, even inside 4 video clips from front and behind to get the side on for a start. You do see a lot of variance in people's actions, even inside 4 balls. And you see various different outcomes, and you do see a lot of whether or not there were probably very few actually we saw were really, really repeatable for every single clip. Which again at 12 and 13, I'd probably expect to see that more at kind of 14 and 15, if I'm honest. But even at 12 and 13, as I say, we've got a number of players, or a lot of our players in the current program who that's what they're continuing to work on. So I wouldn't expect it to be the finished article, but there was quite a lot of variance in that, and that I think the message back to nominees putting videos in is maybe be really wary of what clips you're sending in, and really take the time to make sure that you're submitting the best versions and the best deliveries that you can. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So do you think that, I know it's going slightly off topic, that this group of youngsters, like this is the first time this has been brought in now, and for parents, for coaches to do this, do you think then that these are going to be hit a little bit harder than what was done before? Because before I know the system was abused a little bit before. Coaches from other clubs I know would just putting people on it just to put people on there. Now it's come to a fact that it's got to the point of that you put in video, you got people got put videos on, that this age group now is the ones that are be the guinea pigs, shall we say, are now going to find it harder because you've already got the setup, you've got them people in, so it's a little bit harder for these boys to get in because they're the guinea pigs for this new system.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's harder. I'll answer this one, and then I just can see a question from Interim here, which I'll answer at the end if that's okay. Interim. I wouldn't say it's harder, Andrew, because ultimately players have got even better chance to nominate themselves, where a coach may not have nominated them previously because they weren't thought to be of standard. Actually, any player at any level can, as long as they hit the age criteria, the player can nominate themselves, whether it's their first time playing cricket or whether they've been playing for 10 years. So I'd say it's easier in some ways, and especially the equipment and the access you need to nominate is a lot easier than what it was. So I think we tried really hard to make sure that the tutorial videos that we set out, we were really clear on what they needed to be, and I think some people probably struggle with that a little bit. We weren't after masses and masses. We were just after some real simple clips, and obviously the variety of video quality you get, it was varied. And look, we'll learn some lessons from that, of course. But ultimately, it shouldn't be coaches putting nominations in. That's an education piece for us. Am I right to move on in a minute, Andrew? Just because I wanted to get to the technical bits with everyone. I'm conscious we've got maybe parents who are wicket keepers. I'm not in a rush to get off, by the way, so I'm more than happy to stick around afterwards if
you could, because this is a new system. We didn't know nothing about it, see, so
I would say I won't be in a rush to finish, but I'm just
Right.
conscious. I'll get back to
Yeah.
the spin
Okay. Cheers, thanks,
and some of
man.
the other questions. Thanks. Okay. Um, everybody needs a break from me prattling on for a bit. That's fine. And you won't be the first one to say that either. Okay, spin bowling, cool. So very similar setup to spin bowling in terms of pre-delivery and outcome. And again, you might see some similarities across both disciplines of bowling, but ultimately in the same way that we've looked at a similar way for seam bowlers. Does any spinner show some intent and acceleration in their run up, and especially for spin bowling, it's probably the biggest point and the most common one that we picked up on across the videos. So I think there's a common misconception that because I'm a slower bowler, I don't need to approach the crease with as much pace. And actually, it's probably the opposite. Because the ball is coming slower, you've got to generate that momentum through your run up even more. So we really wanted to see spinners approaching the crease with some intent and with some energy and some acceleration into that run up. We wanted to see again that run up and delivery stride aligned to the target. So that's very obviously similar to what you would see in seam bowling. And again, it linked to the first point is that energy in the action. So any good spin bowler will want to deceive a batter in flight. You will either deceive a batter by the lateral spin, or you will deceive them in the flight. That's the two general ways spinners tend to have success. And if you want to deceive batters in the flight, you've got to be looking to spin the ball hard, and the rotation of the ball in the air is going to allow that dip to happen. So a similar example is like a tennis player putting topspin on a ball on a forehand, for example, because they'll brush up the back of the ball. There'll be a lot of topspin going there. It'll kick off the surface, and it causes some real problems for your opponent. So it's a similar way in spin bowlers. You want to put lots of revs on the ball, not only just to spin it, but the reaction you'll get in the air is it will create dip, and it will create some problems for the batter to work out. We talked about picking line and picking length. It will make picking length and line really difficult for that batter. Okay, so is the spinner showing that intent in the action to try and spin the ball hard? We saw loads of really good attempts to look to spin the ball hard, and that, especially if you're a wrist spinner, that takes a little bit of guts to do as well as skill. And again, we're looking at outcome again. So is the ball actually turning? There might be a lot of energy going on. Is the ball turning? And does it look like it's asking some really tough questions of a batter? I've just mentioned around the deception in the air. Does it look like they've got the potential to try and do that? In the same way as a seam bowler, is there some athleticism in the crease? Is there some rhythm? And when I say endurance, that's probably not something we're looking at inside four balls. To go back to Andrew's point, you're not able to judge that inside four balls. But what I mean by endurance is probably consistency. Is can you bowl your best ball time after time after time, whether that's your first ball in a spell or in your eighth over. But again, we did see quite a lot of variance in people's clips. So inside kind of 6 to 8 balls as to where the ball was coming out. So I'd really encourage players to nail their stock ball, the ball that they bowl 90% of the time. Spinners are particularly, I've just touched on that point there. Spinners are particularly renowned for having a number of variations. And don't get me wrong, it's great that we saw lots of videos of people trying to show us what variations they've got, and that's definitely part of it. But equally, as good as your variations are, your variations tend to be alternate balls, shall we say, or balls that are going to be thrown in once or twice and over, as opposed to your stock ball, which is going to be your kind of your bread and butter. So try and make your stock ball as consistent, as controlled, as challenging as you possibly can if you're a spin bowler. And as I say, some of that pre-delivery stuff is really important to assist you in that. And very lastly, before we bring this to a close, wicket keeping. So obviously one of my stronger disciplines, being a keeper myself. We're looking for keepers to demonstrate obviously really strong stance and posture. I tried to pick. We don't have many images of keepers across the pathway, so I was trying to find an image of a Z shape as best as I can. And I'm conscious you won't see my cursor. I'm going to see if I can annotate this here with a Z shape. Can we see that line, Gemma? Can you see that line I'm trying to draw there? Lovely, thanks. And lovely. Now I don't know how to stop that, so I'll probably end up scribbling all over the page. But we're looking for somewhere close. That's probably not the perfect Z, if I'm being really honest, and the name of the young South keeper escapes me. But a strong Z position when you're in a stance. He's obviously not in a stance there because he's about to take the stumps, but we're looking for your hips to be slightly above your knees. We're looking for your hands out to be out in front and nice and relaxed, your head to be over your hands. And that is the last time I'm ever going to annotate something because now it won't let me stop. There we go. Thank you. Excuse the few dots through there. So in terms of posture and position, as I say, we want nice wide hands to have a nice large catching area. We want a reasonably comfortable, kind of feet shoulder width apart. That can vary slightly depending on the height and the kind of makeup of the individual. But something that's comfy, something that's not too wide, that won't allow you to move side to side quite quickly or transfer your weight, but something that looks reasonably comfy enough. And then obviously as wicket keepers, your bread and butter is actually catching the ball for 99% of the time. So can they demonstrate a consistent ability to catch? Are they, and this is one of the cardinal ones that keepers tend to fall down on at junior level, are they able to stay low and only rise once the ball is bouncing? You tend to see a lot of keepers rising too early before the ball has bounced, and then if the ball misbehaves and goes lower, the keeper's already up and really struggles to react to come back down. So it's much easier generally to stay down as long as you can and then react to the ball coming up off the surface. And as I said there, head over hands over feet is a nice kind of rule of synergy to think of in terms of alignment. And obviously we asked for in the video clips for keepers to show us some evidence of footwork that's short and sharp, and is doing that laterally, and that's often involves standing up to the stumps predominantly that we asked for. So we're looking again for, is the head in a good position, are the eyes level, and again, are they able to maintain that catching area as they're moving? And the leg side stuff is really, really important because often your bread and butter take is the offside as a wicket keeper. In fact, yeah, I will put that last point in there. So are you, when you're taking the ball down the leg side, are you able to demonstrate that you can stay on the offside as late as you can? So if you've got a wicket keeper standing up to the stumps, remember you will have, in a game, you will have a batter that's right in your way. And the real tendency is for wicket keepers to move really early to try and get across to the ball. But the minute you move, you get blinded by that batter and you suddenly lose sight of the ball and you don't pick it up again. So what we do look for is, do players and do young keepers have the ability to stay on the offside as long as possible, use the information that they're getting from the ball moving down the leg side, and then move short and quick to retrieve the ball. If you're standing back, obviously that's a different kettle of fish. You've got a lot more time to react. You can move early and you can move your feet laterally to get across, depending on how wide that ball is. So there's a couple of little nuances there from a keeper's point of view. Okay. So that's really as kind of detailed. I mean, I could go into so much more and probably on every single point and plenty that aren't on there, but at the risk of not going too in detail, I hope that kind of gives a very short overview of some of the questions and some of the things that we were generally asking ourselves when we were reviewing every single clip at every single angle. What are we seeing in this young cricketer? Are we seeing evidence of XYZ? Are we seeing things? And often you might not see anything for 3 or 4 clips. You might see one, oh yeah, I like that bit. Have we got another clip that shows that? And maybe there wasn't that consistency sometimes in those clips. So I appreciate it. And going back to Andrew's point, it is first year of this process. It's the first time we've done it. There was always going to be bits that we might learn from it. We've had some really good feedback from parents who have submitted these saying, yeah, we really like that bit. We found that a bit challenging. And we've actually had some real challenges with clubs cascading the message on to people to let them know what is going on as well. So that's obviously something for us to take back and have a think around how we communicate this as widely and as clearly as we can moving forwards. But as I say, worst case, hopefully there's a couple of things there that whether you're a batter, bowler, keeper, you can really have a look at your own actions and your own techniques and go, yeah, that bit I'm good at that bit. That bit I need to probably spend a little bit of time over the winter giving some attention to. Okay. Superb. I'm going to get to some more questions. There's probably no need if anybody wants to disappear now. You're more than welcome to. Equally, as I said to Andrew, I'm not in a rush, so I'm very happy to get to some of the questions in the chat box. And have we got some? Oh, Gemma's
I've
nice.
answered a couple as we've been going, but the only one, when will applications reopen?
What's that? Sorry, mate. I was reading Gemma's question on the
When
chat
will
box. Sorry.
when will applications reopen for the next intake?
Yeah, good question. I mean, look, we're in the process of confirming our winter cohorts now for this winter. So I wouldn't expect to see any material change to that, at least initially. What I would say, and this is kind of a mantra that I've always tried to keep to, is look, any system might miss a player, and look, who's to say that we're right or wrong? We had a fair independent panel, which included actually Andrew and myself and another pathway lead, and we all individually assessed these before then collectively moderating them. So any doubt where I might have had a different grade to two of the others, any doubt went in favour of the player. So that player would have then progressed to another stage. But we can get stuff wrong. And what I mean is, by the mantra, is any system can miss a player, and any system in whatever sport or whatever pathway can, but any good system won't miss a player for very long. So whilst I don't want to and wouldn't want to make any promises or guarantees to anybody on this call around their son or daughter, there has been times and there have been occasions where players not been successful getting into a winter program, even a summer program, and we have good relationships with clubs and we have good communications, and somebody pops up 7 weeks down the line and goes, I think you might have got this wrong here. This player's had a little growth spurt, they're slinging the ball down, it's looking really, really good. Can you do you want to have another look? And again, it comes down to if our numbers in our programs can support that, and if the numbers in our venues and facilities can support that. But where we can, we often will go, what, let's get that player back in for 2 weeks and we'll have a look and see how they fit with the wider group. So that has happened, and I'm sure it can continue. As I say, I wouldn't want to guarantee anybody on this call that will happen to your son or daughter. I wouldn't want to put myself in that position, but we are pretty receptive and really pretty proactive around keeping an open net. And then obviously once the summer hits, injuries happen, unavailability happens, and we had many instances, and even in your two regions, where we had players, kind of had two players we needed to fill a team for a fixture, and actually we go straight to our list of players who were unsuccessful getting into the start of the winter program. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. I haven't really answered the question of when do these nominations come back out. This process will run again in a similar way to last year. So these were launched in April 2024. So as soon as the season starts, the nomination window is pretty much open all summer, April, May, June, July, August, and even the early part of September for you to get your nominations in. And then we review in September, basically. So I wouldn't say there's any need to put them in April, but if your son or daughter's in a good spot, they feel like they're bowling or batting well or keeping well, just find the time to send in some really good quality video clips and take the time to select the best clips that you feel are going to give them a good chance.
Gemma, do you want to come off mute? I know you're the next one with a question comment.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Much appreciated. I actually found this really, really useful. So the technical and theoretical guidance around what you're looking for is really, really helpful. And although both of my daughters have been playing multiple sports for a number of years, they've only been playing cricket for under 18 months. So it's a bit of a learning curve for us. So it was really, really helpful. I think Mrs. S have got a point there about affluency and understanding this kind of terminology, and I think a lot of that technical guidance would probably come through more specific coaching, which isn't available to all kids. So I just want to say I think she's got a really strong point there, but I have found it really useful, and I think given that my kids play county level in a few different things, this is the only chance I've ever been offered to come back and have a conversation with someone about what it is you're looking for if kids are not successful. So thank you for that. I think my query was around the guidance material in relation to girls at under 15 level, because at the moment, and it might simply be a website update concern, but I'm interpreting that post under 15 opportunity, there might not be an opportunity for girls to reapply. Am I incorrect in my understanding? Have I misinterpreted that?
So the
Or
comms that are currently out there, I appreciate it's been a little bit. So we've had our main head of women and girls cricket. It's kind of flitted between Cricket Wales and Glamorgan. So that's not to put it on her door by any means. But we've had a number of comms. There's a newsletter ready to be drafted publicly. So all of our current pathway parents in the girls space know this, but I appreciate anybody who's not in that space may not be aware. The girls regional program is, so typically we run under the 11s, 13s, and 15s. That's kind of the age groups in which we've operated. From this coming winter, there's been a small change to the girls only, not the boys. But that will be for the girls. It will be under 12s, under 14s, and under 16s. So ultimately, what that means for any girl who's under 15, obviously, some are just gone, would have thought, oh, I'm going to finish my regional program experience this year. That's obviously not the case. They've got this winter and next summer as well. So that's where that's moving to. That's purely to probably mirror what is going to happen at county age group level, which will move to 12, 14, 16s as well. So does that answer your question? I don't know if it does.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the growth in women's and girls cricket has been exponential. I've been roped into it as well. So are you expecting that the age caps will increase as the numbers grow, or is that something that you're just not ready to get into?
I'd love to get to a point in the not too well. But rewind 18 months ago, we only had an 11s and a 15s, I seem to remember, because there wasn't the numbers at 13s, and we kind of thought younger group, older group. Fast forward to now, we've got 11s, 13s, 15s. I would love to get to a point in the next season or two where we are starting to get close to where the boys are at. And boys are obviously 10s, 11s, 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s. So I would love to get to a point where maybe we've got a girls 13s or a girls 11s, and we start to really pack out that girls space. There's a few moving parts to that around coaching, for one, in terms of personnel in coaching. But look, those types of things, you tend to find a way to do them once you've got the opportunity to grow the base. So yes, that's the plan. How soon that happens, I'm not sure, but if it's anything like where we've seen it at the moment, then it won't be long.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Okay. So just to clarify, April for submissions for the summer.
It will go live in April, but any time between April and August. Yeah.
Great.
We won't review that. We won't review them until September. That we kind of put that hard date where we will review them in September. So you've got lots of time between the start of the season and the end of it. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
No worries. Just to touch on Mrs. S's, I've just been trying to read that whilst Gemma's been talking. It's a really good point. And I'm conscious I don't want to sound too defensive, I suppose, in how I answer this. Everything that's been mentioned on those slides there, I think you're right in a lot of what you've said around it seems to be a tough ask. I wouldn't necessarily agree with the private school bit, but every technical point there that has been mentioned is, I don't know if we've got anybody. Andrew said he's a core coach. Andrew can probably testify. Everything on that we've mentioned there is on a core coach course. So a core coach is effectively your level 2 UKCC course, which obviously everybody's club setup is slightly different, but you will have a wide range of level 2 coaches at your cricket club. I would like to think, or most cricket clubs will have a number of level 2 coaches. So none of the things we've talked about on there, maybe the exception of the fast bowling indicators around brace front leg and those types of things, which, as I say, is a rarity that you see that at a young age anyway. There shouldn't be anything there that is unbelievably rocket science. And I say rocket science as in these are fundamentals of the game. And don't get me wrong, we don't probably have a single player in our program that would write down all of those and say, I'm 10 out of 10 in all of those. If they would, they'd be playing a much better standard than our program. So I appreciate the point. What it does highlight is that there's a real big space between what we want to do at pathway level and what we're looking for at pathway level, and how we cascade that information to club coaches and to clubs to go, if you're going to work on a Friday night with your 20 under 12s, these are the types of things we want to be seeing. So how can you find a way to start getting at those types of things? That's the big piece for us to try and navigate. I don't think we ever win that space. I think that's just an ongoing collaborative bit. We have Glamorgan at the same level asking us, this is what we want to see in a county age group player. So we have a job to try and make sure that we facilitate that within our program, so it works in exactly the same way lower down the pathway, if that makes sense, Mrs. S. But thanks for your point. It's really, really important one. Okay. Interim, do you still need club coaches' recommendations, or is it independent? Yeah, good question. And again, this forms part of the learning interim for us in previously and moving forwards. We were really clear, and part of the whole point is that we want players to take the onus to nominate themselves. We want to move away from a space where a club coach might, and look, we all, without going too far into this, everybody has bias. I think society has learned that everybody has a degree of bias. It's how you mitigate that bias as best as you can. So what we want to do is move away from a club coach going, this is what I think good looks like, and so anybody that doesn't fit what I think good looks like isn't gonna get a nomination. We want to see as many nominations as possible, whether or not it's the first time you've picked up a cricket bat. You might not be with a cricket club, so you might not have a cricket club coach to nominate you. So whether you play park cricket, whether you play on the street, wherever you might play, if you think you want to have a go at playing pathway cricket, there's a way to do that. So that's why we want to move away from coaches doing it, and we're very happy to trawl through 500 nominations if it means that many, to put a fair judgment on every single individual. And I'm going to go one more question before I come back to Andrew and probably draw it to a close, because Intram asked one earlier. If a batter is the top scorer for their club and has already provided video evidence supporting the majority, do they need to wait for a year to be assessed again? I think I understand what you're saying there. So Interam, obviously at this point now where we've moderated them, we're happy with the moderation and the grades that we've given, obviously, to be at the stage that we are. The point you make on stats is a really interesting one, because it's probably, again, everyone probably sits slightly differently on it. Stats are important, and they're also dangerous in the same breath, I would suggest. There's an increasing body of evidence that the ECB are putting out there from a proper scientific research angle that is suggesting that there is not a lot of evidence to suggest what you do underneath under 15 is a strong indicator of then what you do at senior level, which is really, really interesting. And that space is still to be unpacked quite a lot. We can't disregard that entirely, because obviously to an extent you do pay attention to what youngsters are doing on the pitch. That plays a really important part. But we have to try and find that balance between what we think is current performance and then what we see as future potential. And that's kind of the continuum that we probably sit on every time we get to a player where we go, this is what we're seeing, that's the current performance, where do we think that future potential is going to get to from what we're seeing? So I don't think there's a black and white answer. Stats can be really important. They can support an argument. They can also really not tell the full picture. So again, I could give you an hour on my views on stats versus anecdotal stuff that you observe. But nobody probably wants to hear that. So it's a hard one. It's always a hard one. Talent development is very grey. I wish it was more black and white, but unfortunately it's not. But that's probably a shortish answer to that question, hopefully. Julie, you've just said you need a level 2 worth of coaching. Oh, sorry, my thing's just scrolled up there. Sorry, Julie, hold on 1 second. Andrew, have you answered that one for me, Julie?
I'm sorry, Matt. That was me replying to Mrs. That was my fault. I'm like an annoying student now that I've taught today. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I thought there's one from
Nice to get
Julie
my
about
own
level
back on
2.
someone else, to be
Julie,
honest.
do you want to come off mute and ask me that level 2 question? Sorry, I'm struggling to find it. Oh, there we are. Sorry,
Have you
Julie, I
found
found it.
it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
found it. You just said you need a level 2 worth of coaching to get past the evaluation. Oh no, if I've said that, I've not been very clear. You don't need a level 2 process to get past anything. What I'm saying is that the technical content that we've talked through tonight, all of that stuff that we've talked through there is something that any level 2 coach in your club is capable of helping your son or daughter to get better at. There's nothing that we've mentioned there that is a level 2 coach wouldn't be able to help in. So I think when Mrs. S mentioned, it sounds like you need to be in a special environment to be able to, to be able to give yourself a chance through this process. I really wouldn't want that to be the case, because anybody that's if you're lucky enough to be in a club, and say most clubs will have a level 2 coach, then that's fine. Equally, some of the best nominations you'll ever see in the world is when someone's had no coaching and they've just got pure natural ability. So it can work very much both ways.
I think that my comment was based on you said you're encouraging people to apply from anywhere, but actually one of the criteria is you have to stand behind the wickets and be bowled at. It's like, how would you do that if you're playing in the street? That's actually not, if you've got a decent bowler, that's not somewhere you'd want to stand. So you have to have access. You're saying you want anyone to be able to apply, which I think is absolutely amazing. But at the same point, there's a certain level of access that you do need. Like you're saying, a level 2 coach. Well, that's assuming that you have a club that you can play for.
I'm not sure I understand the level 2 coach bit. We've had nominations. I couldn't tell you the age group off the top of my head. Andrew could clarify this, because I remember we had a young fast bowler running in on his pavement outside his house, bowling into the brick wall, which was great. Didn't need to see him bowling in a net. We also had a number of batters sitting in a field, not at a cricket club, facing a delivery. Yes, that can make it slightly more challenging, but at the same time, going back to some of the technical points, are they able to make a decision? Are they able to move pick line and length? What's their balance like? You can still pick up all sorts of those things from the environments in which they're in. So we're very aware there might be people who aren't at cricket clubs, who don't have the luxury of going to a cricket club, but are still able, as long as you've got a mobile phone and WhatsApp, then yeah, you can send a nomination in. So it could be a playground, it could be simply anywhere. So sorry if I'm not quite getting your question there. It doesn't need a level 2 coach. It just needs mum or dad or a mate standing there to film what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's okay. I think there's a lot of nuances in it all, and like you say, I accept your answer.
Okay, I'm more than happy to stick around after if you want to unpack that more. That's fine. We'll, I think, at the risk of kind of going beyond an hour, which we're almost at. Thanks for that engagement. That's really helpful. And for some of those questions. Andrew, I'll more than happily stick around for yourself in a second, but I'm going to stop recording there.